Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? Adjman Job coming to you guys here today with another unboxing video. So today I have in for you guys the Return to Ravnica event deck, Wrack and Rage. So this is a red and black aggro-based deck. So we're going to be opening it on up here today. We're going to take a look at the contents of the deck, all the cards that we have that are included in here. And after we're done with that, we're actually going to take a look at some improvements that we can make to this deck that are all going to be budget-based. Now, I'm not going to be adding in like Thundermaw, Hellkites, Falkenroth, Aristocrats. While those cards are really good and would be appropriate in this deck, everything that we are going to do in terms of improvements are going to be basically budget-based. So we're going to open this on up. If you guys want to purchase one of these event decks, there's a link down below to abugames.com where you can purchase one of these up and you can have yourselves a really awesome deck here. Now, these decks are really good for anybody that's trying to get into the competitive scene of Magic the Gathering, trying to do some like FNM play or maybe even something bigger, but sometimes they're a little bit lackluster. They have some cards that aren't really that amazing, so we are going to take a look at what we have inside and try to improve it. Alright, so there we go. Taking off all that wrapping. And this cover slides off very nicely here. And we have a nice black and red colored box here. Has Magic the Gathering on the top, the Return to Ravnica logo. Pretty nice looking. It can store your cards. I believe you can store sleeved cards in here. They should be able to fit if I remember correctly. So let's take a look at what we have inside here. So we have our cards, and we have a how to play guide and a divider. We also have a die in here, a spin down 20-sided die, which it's kind of funny that we have the Golgari one in a Rakdos deck, but nonetheless, it's always nice to have a spin down die, and that's one of the other great things about purchasing one of these. You get a spin down die with it. So let's take a look at the contents here. So we have our box. I'm actually going to move this off to the side until the end of the video, and then I'll bring it right back onto the camera. Alright, so we have our sideboard for the deck. We have the divider. We have two how to play guides, one for general Magic and one talking about the deck and explaining how things work. And then we have our main board of the deck, all the cards that we have. So let's take a look at the main board here first. I'm going to kind of go a little bit quickly through and see what all we have. So we have some Stonewrights here. We have two of them. And this one's actually... There we go. There's the second one. I looked at the deck list of this prior to actually opening this on up. So we do have the two Stonewrights. We have Stromkirk Nobles as a 2-of as well. So it can't be blocked by humans. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, it gets some counters on them. We have some Rakdos Cacklers, essentially a 2/2 for 1 mana. So we have a playset of those. Knight of Infamy, protection from White and Exalted. Pretty solid. We have 3 of those. Lightning Mauler, 2/1 for 1 generic, 1 red. Soul Bond, giving the paired creatures haste, which is pretty solid. So 2 of those. Rixmadi, Guild Mage, pretty solid Guild Mage. It's a little bit slow for constructed play. However, I do really love it whenever I'm drafting or playing sealed. So we have 3 of the Guild Mages. Rakdos Shred-Freak, haste, 2/1 for hybrid red or black. Well, double hybrid red or black. So we have a playset of the Shred-Freak. Hellhole Flailer, another card that's just really awesome. Unleash, and you can sack him and deal damage to your opponent. We have 2 of those. We have our lands here, so we have 1 Dragonskull Summit. The mana base can always be improved with more Dragonskull Summits, as well as Blood Crypts to this deck if you guys have them and if it's in your budget. So we have 1 Dragonskull Summit. We have 2 Rakdos Guildgates. We have some basic swamps. And some basic mountains. And then we have some more spells in the deck. So we have Pillar of Flame as a playset, dealing 2 damage to target creature or player. If a creature dealt damage this way would die during this turn, exile it instead. So pretty solid for Undying based decks like zombies. We also have Mizzium Mortars, which deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control, and it also has an overload for 6 mana, which is really, really solid. Nightbird's Clutch is a card that I actually really like in this deck, and I really like that they included it in here. Up to 2 target creatures can't block this turn, and it also has a flashback, so sorcery speed card allowing you to swing in unanswered, essentially. We also have Searing Spear, dealing 3 damage to target creature or player for 2 mana, so we have a playset of that. Rakdos Charm, which we can manipulate our opponent's graveyard, and we're able to exile all cards from their graveyard. Or destroy target artifact, or each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. And then we have 2 Brimstone Volley, dealing 3 damage to target creature or player. Morbid for dealing 5 damage instead if a creature died during this turn. And we also have Devil's Play, which deals X amount of damage to target creature or player, and it also has a flashback, which is a little bit expensive, but still castable. So that's the main board that we have for the deck. Now let's take a look at the sideboard here. Alright, so first off we have Grafdigger's Cage, which is going to restrict our opponent from using any graveyard synergies, any stuff like that, flashbacks. Grafdigger's Cage overall is actually pretty solid in this deck, so that's definitely an option to still have after the suggestions and improvements. We also have Duress as a 3-up, which is really awesome against control matchups. Electrickery, getting rid of really small creatures with like 1 toughness, and it also has an overload to get rid of all of your opponent's 1 toughness creatures. Faithless Looting, where we can draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards, also has a flashback. Vexing Devil, which is actually going to be in the sideboard after we do our tweaks to the deck, or it's going to be in the main board, should I say. Vexing Devil was awesome. It's just a really nice aggro-based card. 4/3 for 1 red, and your opponent can have the Vexing Devil deal 4 damage to them, and then you sack the Vexing Devil. So it's essentially like 4 damage for 1 red. Ultimate Price has a 2-up, destroying monocolored creatures for 2. Murder, double black and 1 generic, destroying target creature. We have 2 of those. And 2 more Brimstone Volleys that are actually going to be in the main board after we take a look at everything here. So that's the main board and the sideboard here. Now let's clear things up a little bit. We're going to take a look at the main board. I'm going to map it out, and then we're going to take a look at the improvements and the stuff that I want to switch around here. Alright, so now I have the entire main board here just kind of mapped out really quickly. We have our 2 Stonewrights, 2 Stromkirk Nobles, playset of Rakdos Cackler, 3 Knight of Infamy. We have a playset of Rakdos Shred-Freak, 2 Hellhole Flailers, Devil's Play, 2 Brimstone Volley, 2 Lightning Mauler, 3 Rick's Mighty Guildmage, playset of Pillar of Flame, Mizzium Mortars, playset of Searing Spear, Nightbird's Clutches, and Rakdos Charm. So now let's take a look at some of the options that I wanted to do as far as switching things around. Now the first thing was that I actually wanted to take a few cards from the sideboard and push them into the main board. So we have Brimstone Volley, which is a 2-of in the sideboard, and I actually wanted to add these into the main board just because it's a tremendous card for that 3 mana, being able to deal 5 damage if the Morbid triggered off, and it's just a huge way to give yourself a pretty big lead in the game. So we have the 2 Brimstone Volleys that I definitely want to add in from the sideboard, as well as Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil is another card that should be in the main board. It's really strong, and it's pretty appropriate to have it in the main board for most situations. If it ends up not working out for you in a certain matchup, you can always side it out for something else. But I definitely do like the concept of having it just in the main board as a, oh, it's 1 red, deal 4 damage type of spell. So I did want to add that in. So those 3 from the sideboard are going to be coming in. I also wanted to add in 1 more Hellhole Flailer because Hellhole Flailer is just really strong. Essentially, he's a 4/3 with that Unleash for 3 mana, and with the 4 cost ability that he has to let you sack him and then deal damage equal to his power to target player. That's pretty awesome to have in a creature. So he can swing in and then you can sack him. Essentially, he can deal 8 damage on his own if he's not answered. He's a really, really powerful card, and I definitely want to have him in here. So one more Hellhole Flailer. And actually a playset of Ash Zealot. So Ash Zealot has First Strike and Haste. She is a 2/2 for double red. And whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, Ash Zealot deals 3 damage to that player. So if your opponent's playing like flashback spells and stuff like that, you're going to be able to punish them by dealing 3 damage each time they attempt to flashback a spell. So Ash Zealot, another card that is just really, really strong, and I wanted to add in. So now let's take a look at what I wanted to take out here. So some stuff that I wanted to take out. The Rakdos Charm, I wanted to add this into the sideboard. It's a great card for graveyard hate. However, it's not something that you really want to have in the main board. If you're playing up against like Reanimator-based decks, then you can kind of work your way into siding it in. But not necessarily something we want to have in the main board here. Another card was Mizzium Mortars. And the reason why I wanted to take this out was because we could add in Brimstone Volley from the sideboard to the main board instead. Mizzium Mortars is another just really great card. It's a really good option for dealing with creatures. However, you don't really have the knowledge, unless you're playing like casual against your buddies, that you're going to be playing up against a just entirely creature-based deck if you're going to a tournament. There's no real way to know that. So Mizzium Mortars is going to go into the sideboard. We can side it in if we're playing up against anything that's really creature heavy, if they have like Lexodon Smiters, stuff like that, where it's like 4 toughness that we want to get rid of. Then we can side in the Mizzium Mortars, but we don't necessarily need it as far as the main board goes. We're just going to move it to the sideboard, and whenever we need it, we can just side it in. Lightning Mauler was another card that I wanted to take out. It's really nice to have haste for your creatures, but it doesn't really do much else for us. So I did want to take out the Lightning Maulers because we could add in the Ash Zealots over it. So 2 of the Lightning Maulers are going to go out. And also Rixmaw Guild Mage. Now, Guild Mages are really strong, and Rixmaw is pretty strong as far as a Guild Mage could go, but it's kind of slow. The Guild Mages are a little bit slow for constructed play. As far as Limited is concerned, it's a much slower based format, so you can get away with running the Guild Mages, and they are really tremendous for that type of a format. But for constructed, we just have some better things that we can use, and I think I would rather want to have like something like Ash Zealot in its place. So the Rixmaw Guild Mage is going to go out for us. So now let's take a look at the cards that we're adding in. So there's 8 cards that we are adding in, and we have 7 here. Another thing, now that I think of it, was to actually take out 1 land. So one of the lands is going to be coming out because we have 24 lands as a starting point for this deck whenever you purchase it. So I wanted to take out 1 swamp because we don't need a whole lot of black for us. We do need black as far as the main board goes, but we don't need a really heavy amount of it or anything like that. So I wanted to take out 1 more swamp to have like that 8th spot here to add in another creature card or another spell here that I wanted to add in. So those are the 8 cards that we have here. So 4 and 4, and now we're going to add in the rest of our cards. So we have our Ash Zealots we're going to plop in here. So the play set of Ash Zealots, another Hellhole Flailer that we're going to stick in here. If I can just get them organized because I'm very OCD. Alright, so we have that. We also have our Brimstone Volleys, so I'll move that over. 2 more Brimstone Volleys. And we have our 1 Vexing Devil that's going to be coming in. So ultimately, our deck is going to be a little bit improved now. It's going to work a little bit better. It's going to be a little bit more aggressive with our cards. We have more haste-based cards. We have the Ash Zealots that are coming in. It's definitely going to play off of the deck being a little bit more red-heavy, and it's going to support that. But you guys can always add in more dual lands, the shock lands as well, to the deck to kind of smooth things out. But the way that the deck is looking, the land base is basically staying the same unless you guys want to add dual lands. We just took out 1 swamp to add in another card. 23 lands is perfectly fine for an aggro-based deck like this. We're not going too huge with curves. if you guys have more expensive cards, you can add it in Thundermaw, Hellkite, Falconroth, Aristocrat, but the deck that it's looking like now is going to be 2 Stonewright, 2 Stromkirk Noble, playset of Rakdos Cackler, 3 Knight of Infamy, playset of Rakdos Shred-Freak, 3 Hellhole Flailer, playset of Ash Zealot, 1 Vexing Devil, playset of Pillar of Flame, playset of Searing Spear, 1 Nightbird's Clutches to make our creatures essentially unblockable, playset of Brimstone Volley just because it's really awesome, and the 1 Devil's Play, which is kind of like a fireball for us. So those are the cards that we have in here for the main board. Now we are going to clear the board and take a look at what we have for the sideboard. Alright, so this is the sideboard that we have that comes stock with the deck as it is sealed. So the changes, as I mentioned before when we were taking a look at the main board, were to put the Brimstone Volleys and the Vexing Devil into the main board, so we aren't really even going to look at those right now. So those are 3 spots that we potentially had open just right off the bat. The rest of the cards that we have here are the Grafdigger's Cage, the 2 Ultimate Price, the 2 Murder, 2 Faithless Looting, 2 Electrickery, and the 3 Duress. Now, the other things that I wanted to kind of add in here, we had Rakdos Charm that was coming from the main board into the sideboard. Like I mentioned before, it lets us exile all cards from target player's graveyard, so it's going to help us to play around Reanimator type cards like the Angel of Glory's Rise decks and also Angel of Serenity Reanimator style decks, so we can work our way around that. So 1 Rakdos Charm was coming from the main deck, and I also wanted to add in 1 more just because it's a really powerful card and it deals with Reanimator, so I wanted to add in another one of my own to this sideboard here, so we have those. I also wanted to add in Pyreheart Wolf. So Pyreheart Wolf is a 1/1 creature for 3, and whenever it attacks, each creature you control can't be blocked this turn except by 2 or more creatures, and it also has Undying. So Pyreheart Wolf is really nice because it essentially is going to make your creatures really hard to block unless your opponent has just a huge army of creatures. But in that situation, there's not really a whole lot of ways to make your way out unless you resolve Mizzium Mortars or something like that. But Pyreheart Wolf was another really strong way for the deck to just be kind of like unblockable and work from there. So I wanted to add in 2 of the Wolves and the 1 Mizzium Mortars that was in the main board. That's going to be coming into the sideboard as well. So Mizzium Mortars we're just going to put right there. And the 2 Pyreheart Wolves that I wanted to add in, we're actually going to be taking out Faithless Looting. Now, Faithless Looting is a really useful utility card as far as being able to draw goes, but having Pyreheart Wolf is a little bit more appropriate for this deck just because if we're playing up against something where our opponent's able to make like small creatures off of like Lingering Souls or something like that to block our creatures and essentially stall the game, our Pyreheart Wolf is going to be pretty effective in letting us swing in, and our opponent's not going to be able to block everything. So we're going to take out the 2 Faithless Looting because we can have our Pyreheart Wolf in here. But the rest of the cards are pretty appropriate for where they're sitting. The Murder is double black, and that's a little bit awkward, but with the fixing, you can still play it if you're able to get to dual lands and stuff. Murder shouldn't be any problem for this deck, and it should definitely be something that you can use up against a whole lot of different creatures. Ultimate Price is also very strong, getting rid of monocolored creatures. There's a ton of them in the format in Standard, so you can always get rid of some stuff with the Ultimate Price, especially big things like Thundermaw, Hellkite, the Angel of Serenity, and a ton of other stuff. Grafdigger's Cage to restrict our opponent from using flashback spells. They can't cast cards from graveyards or libraries, and creature cards can't enter the battlefield from graveyards or libraries as well, so it restricts that as well. So it's kind of a way to make sure our opponent's not playing off of like flashbacks or Undying, anything like that. So one of the Grafdigger's Cage, the Electrickery, like I mentioned before, to get rid of a ton of really small creatures like with 1 toughness, stuff like that. We can overload for 2 mana, get rid of all of them. 3 Duress up against the control matchup and other types of mid-range builds where they're running a lot of like planeswalkers or non-creature spells. The Duress is going to be useful, so we can take a look at their at our opponent's hand. We can choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, and they have to discard it. The Mizzium Mortars to get rid of creatures if we need it, we can side it in, and the Rakdos Charm for more graveyard hate. So that's the sideboard that we have here for the deck. And there you have it, guys. So that about wraps up this event deck opening and the improvements that I wanted to do to this deck. If you guys enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you like, favorite, and subscribe for more Magic the Gathering videos. The entire deck list is down below where you guys can use it as a reference, and you can order up one of these event decks on abugames.com. Their link is down below where you can find these event decks and purchase one online. Until next time, guys, have yourselves a wonderful, fun-filled Magic the Gathering day.